Americans on this 4th of July weekend are sick and tired. Americans on this 4th of July flag-waving, firework displaying 4th of July weekend are sick and tired. Sick because of COVID-19, of course, and all of the other illnesses and diseases that affect Americans, but particularly coronavirus that has everyone gripped globally by this pandemic. Fannie Lou Hamer from Montgomery County, Mississippi, in 1964, recounting as a civil rights leader that she was sick and tired of being sick and tired. This week, NBC News had a report that Dr. Nadine Burke Harris has said that what we all know is true, that racism kills, and it may be the main cause of health disparities between whites and blacks in America. Dr. Burke Harris says, quote, "As a doctor and a policymaker, I often hear the question, what is it about black and brown people that makes us more vulnerable to the virus? That question infuriates me. Science makes clear how powerfully our experiences and environment shape our biology. That the disproportionate death rate of black and brown people from COVID-19 is no coincidence. It is directly related to the history of racial oppression in our nation. And the science, she says, has been around for decades." This 4th of July weekend, Americans are sick and tired. Who of you watching isn't just fatigued? This unusual 4-month period that we've had as a country has left us simply spent emotionally, and with good reason. We should be tired of seeing the images and learning the news of this and that African American man or woman being brutally murdered. Americans are sick and tired. And black Americans are sick and tired of being sick and tired. Where do the sick and tired go? The gospel lesson said today, "Come to me, all who labor and are heavy laden." Well, that's just about everybody watching this program, experiencing this time of worship with us. That the labored and the heavy laden know firsthand what it is like to not feel as though they can sleep, that they can rest, they can lay down their burden down by any riverside. Today, when we hear Jesus say those words, "Come to me, all you who labor and are heavy laden." Dr. Fauci said that if we don't change our behaviors, soon, very soon perhaps, 100,000 new cases a day will shock our system. How's that for a burden? And how about all of those in frontline positions like hospitals and other places of medical care who are laboring hour after hour, shift after shift, with no rest? "Come to me," Jesus said, "and I'll give you rest." Well, Jesus, we sure could use some. On this 4th of July weekend, when we're used to picnics and fireworks and flag waving and all of the accoutrement of celebrating our patriotism and celebrating the independence of the country, here's a day that we remember our interdependence, our dependence upon others to move through this time, to be together in a way that demands that we be together, that we're dependent upon. So when I wear a mask and you wear a mask, I'm not just making a statement about that I'm afraid. I'm taking seriously your health and safety and my health and safety. So it's not a political football, it's a public health decision. Public health officials all across the country doing their job are on the receiving end of hate mail, death threats, so much so that they have had to be protected, and some have found it just too onerous and have had to walk away from their positions. Free California. You can't make me wear a mask. Don't tread on me. Those kinds of comments that disregard someone else's freedom to life, that's a problem. When he received the Philadelphia Medal of Liberty some decades ago, the Czech president Václav Havel said this upon receiving the award: "Your Declaration of Independence states that the Creator gave man, humanity, the right to liberty. It seems humanity can realize that liberty only if he or she does not forget the one who endowed them with it." And that's where it gets thorny. That's a thorny question. How do we encourage people to not forget the roots of liberty, life, liberty, the pursuit of justice, not as an American, not even as a world citizen, but as a child of God? Havel went on to say, "To remember only my freedom while forgetting yours is not to remember at all." So what do we do? How do we, on this weekend of all weekends, where we have this kindred companionship, yes, as Americans, but also as persons who work out of the kingdom of God, how do we help the heavy laden, those who labor? Well, the first thing is to realize that you may not be able to, that some have suffered and endured so much, and they have taken all the help they can stand. Secondly, don't give answers. Don't be an easy answer giver, because you may not even know the question. Third, one way to help burden bearers is to be quietly present. You don't need to say a thing, for your presence will speak volumes. But you may need to speak, which is another way. In a recent book entitled "White Too Long: The Legacy of White Supremacy in American Christianity," Robert P. Jones, who grew up Southern Baptist in the American South, describes what it was like and how it is that white American Christians simply cannot reckon with their past. Jones says, in survey after survey, contemporary white Christians repeatedly deny that structural racism is a problem, that shootings of unarmed blacks are not isolated incidents, or even that African Americans still face racism and discrimination. And then adds, but curiously, white non-Christians much more often agree with blacks about racial discrimination. Public opinion survey after the next says that it is so. As long as white supremacy, Jones says, has a hold on our culture, it's pretty comfortable for white Christian churches to say their theology is about personal salvation and personal lives. Theology has been constricted to be only about personal piety, disconnected from claims of social justice. Everything outside of salvation is labeled politics. One way we can help is to finally say something. For some, it will be simply to be present with a person of color and simply encourage them to stay the course and encourage all of us to resist and persist. And for others, it will mean finally saying something about systemic racism. And lastly, another is to be absent. Yes, I said that. To be absent because they need space. To need space is to rest from easy answerers or know-it-alls, to be paralyzed by analysis, or to just be patted on the head. You just need space. On this 4th of July, I have a feeling that's what many people need. Emma Lazarus, who wrote that poem, New Colossus, in 1883, the words, of course, are engraved on the pedestal of the Statue of Liberty. Give me your tired, your poor, your huddled masses. What? Yearning. Yearning to do what? Yearning to breathe free. With COVID and its respiratory problems leading to death, racism, chokeholds, knees to necks, and its respiratory murder, just breathing. Before there was George Floyd, there was Eric Garner who said, "I can't breathe," to which the policeman said, "F your breath." Just before George Floyd was a young 23-year-old in Denver, outside of Denver, Elijah McClain, walking home from a corner store, listening to music, and before you know it, he's in a carotid chokehold, and he says those words, "I can't breathe." Ida B. Wells, who helped begin the NAACP, she too was from Mississippi. She spoke as an African American activist, and she said, "Our country's national crime is lynching. It is not the creature of an hour, the sudden outburst of uncontrolled fury, or the unmistakable brutality of an insane mob. It's the air that we I wonder how Miss Wells and Fannie Lou Hamer, what kind of exhale of breath they would have this week as their home state finally removed a Confederate emblem from their state flag, the last in the Confederacy to do so. Maybe they would take a big, deep breath and remember, come to me, come to me. Today, as we approach the communion table, I want you to take out your phone. And as Kyle plays for us, I want you to reach out to someone in your life, and I want you to place a call to them. For you see, a service like this, where we are aware of our dependence upon God for strength, is also our awareness that we are dependent upon the agency of another human being, someone who will bear our burdens with us, that they are Jesus in the flesh for us. And so as Kyle plays, this is a moment of ministry where we understand our dependence on friends and sisters and brothers to get us through this American moment. Because remember, Americans this 4th of July weekend are sick and tired. And I know someone who specializes in receiving the sick and the tired, the labored and the heavy laden. Make that call.